The group had asked me to talk about is just what we see at the laboratory about current trends. And so my objective, if this works, there we go. My primary objective is really to review, I guess, what I would consider the mega trends in PRRS diagnostic applications for sure in the U.S. If not, I think they're fairly representative of what would be going on across North America from our view of where we sit at Iowa State. And I want to acknowledge this group of folks, and these are the folks, about 22 faculty and about 100 technical staff who, they're the folks that I have the pleasure of going to work with each and every day. A tremendous group of folks, and these are the folks that are doing the work and serving our pork industry in Iowa and abroad. And so, like most diagnostic labs, we do an awful lot of this every day. So a little over 1,000 times each week, we get in cases from Iowa and throughout the U.S. and provide what we believe to be a quality diagnostic service. And how we're somewhat unique is because of where we're located. And so this graph just shows a depiction of the where the pigs are at in the U.S. And Iowa is somewhat unique in that we get an awful lot of pigs imported into the state. So a little over 500,000 pigs are reared outside the state and brought to Iowa to be finished each and every week. And so because of that, and because we are the benefactor of some tremendous systems of logistics that we enjoy in this country, we play a role in serving producers in various parts of the U.S. And that leads to this, is that so we tend to be more of a swine-focused laboratory than most diagnostic laboratories in the U.S., with something over 75 to almost now 80% of the diagnostic services that we provide are focused on serving the swine industry. And so I shared that because I think what we see at the diagnostic lab at Iowa State is a fairly reasonable representation of the diagnostic picture that's occurring throughout the U.S. Okay, so back to the objectives, megatrends. One of the most significant megatrends is there's just been a very significant growth in the amount of molecular diagnostics that are being applied. And so you can see here essentially almost a 300% growth over the past 5 fiscal years at Iowa State. And while PCR diagnostics have grown dramatically, the use of ELISA tools has essentially been flat over that same period of time. And similarly, or somewhat that's related to that, is that the amount of samples that are being tested that are actually positive has reduced very significantly from something over 27% of all samples down to 16% by PCR, and essentially a very similar picture by ELISA. And what's driving that is that there's been a very significant shift in the application of PRRS diagnostics from maybe more of a diagnostic tool or diagnostic focus to meaning sick pig type animal diagnostics, to the use of these tools in preventative medicine and or programmatic monitoring. And one of the largest things is around both in PRRS positive, seropositive and PRRS seronegative herds, people really have a significant interest of, even if you have positive herds, there's been a mega shift that people feel confident that they recognize the value of having PRRS negative weaned pigs. And so lots and lots of these commercial farms are monitoring their weaned pigs on a routine basis to understand their status at weaning, as well as the continued monitoring and testing of replacement breeding stock prior to movement, and similarly with boar studs as semen is being distributed each week. And as one thing that I think that goes right along with that, just of something that we've seen at our local laboratory, is as this growth in programmatic monitoring was occurring, one of the things that we did to help accommodate that demand was we went into an off-site location that's located on the campus, or actually on the campus of College of Vet Med, but somewhat separate from the laboratory, and renovated an old space and turned it into a fairly state-of-the-art molecular diagnostic lab. And that's all they do is PRRS PCR for expected naive herds. And they run 2 shifts a day, 6 days a week, in something that we call our health assurance testing services laboratory. And I shared that just because I think that was a response to a growing demand that we saw amongst our client base. Another megatrend has been a shift from where there was a period of time where a lot of labs were using their own PCR assays, own reagents, this kind of thing. And there's really been a shift really across the board in that from lab-specific assays to the use of commercially manufactured reagents that are readily available. And the thing that I wanted to point out in this is that this loop between the manufacturers back to the labs is a very tight one, because as we all know, this PRRS virus continues to evolve, and so we have this close working relationship with our commercial manufacturer reagent suppliers to ensure that those assays are keeping up with the assays being used at the laboratories. Another very significant change over the past few years has been the use of oral fluids as a diagnostic specimen. I would say it's probably been one of the more transformational changes in the world of applied PRRS diagnostics that's occurred. And initially it was being used primarily all for molecular diagnostics, yes, PCR-based detection, yes, no. And since that time there's been ELISA assays developed, so being used for antibody detection, and then as well as used in large-scale sequencing applications today. And just to show you what that picture looks like at the laboratory, as you can see where it really was introduced at the laboratory as being used in a commercial way in their fiscal year of 2010, and what's happened since that period of time. So really a dramatic adaptation of this tool for both antigen and antibody detection and for gene sequencing applications at the laboratory. One of the most recent introductions of a PRRS oral fluid assay has been the development by Dr. Zimmerman and Kitty-Wanrat and others with this bringing antibody-based detection. As far as I would know, it would be the first antibody-based tool based on oral fluids being used in swine. And since that tool has been brought on, again, in very similar fashion, it's really interesting as new technology gets introduced, there's definitely an adaptation period for people to understand its capabilities, its limitations, and then where it fits into these diagnostic systems. So again, that's the newest tool associated with oral fluids that's been brought on. Another very significant area of growth has been in PRRS sequencing. Just very significant, about a fourfold increase in the amount of sequencing that's being done at the laboratory, and that's really been largely driven by some of these area regional projects and or within system projects where historically it was based on individual break requests, farm breaks, was the virus new or different, that kind of thing. And that is still being used today in a significant way, but the biggest growth has been using sequencing data in what I would consider a more systematic way to look at essentially how viruses are moving within spaces and regions over a period of time. Okay? And as that situation has evolved, it's like anything else, diagnostic systems, I think they adjust. Okay, and so what this graph illustrates is, and I don't know if I can get this pointer to work or not, I don't think so. So it doesn't matter. What this just shows is the volume of PRRS sequencing over time from 2009 to 2013, and then the red bar is turnaround time. And so as you can see, essentially what's happened there is there was a shift as the volume of this PRRS sequencing request was coming on. There were systems developed at the laboratory essentially to enhance both the quality of work and the timeliness in which those results are being reported. And this was something as we got into this, and people wanted to use oral fluids for these regional projects for obvious reasons. And so as we got into this is something we quickly understood, that our sequencing success rate on oral fluids was much lower, and that can be for a variety of reasons. One big one is that typically the CT value or the concentration of virus in serum samples or tissue samples that are being tested for PRRS or having PRRS sequencing done is much higher. And that's because it is higher in those affected tissues, and it's also some sampling bias because a lot of times those samples are being collected from sick animals, right, versus surveillance-based testing. But what we could see here is that we knew that just the overall CT itself was having a very significant implication on the overall success rate we were observing as far as a PRRS oral fluid sequencing success. And then in 2012, I think it was last summer of 2012, we had modified our extraction procedure that we had already previously modified based on some work that Wayne Chittick and others had done as far as our extraction procedures for use of in oral fluids, and we adapted that same technology over to in our sequencing assays and so on. And when we did that, we saw a very significant change of about a 25% improvement, going from 56% success rate over this period of time, and subsequent to the change went to 80% success rate in oral fluids. So I shared that just from an example of these assays or these techniques in the laboratory continue to improve to adapt to these sort of more complex matrices and are making a difference. And so there's just an awful lot of continuous improvement activity that's occurring. And what I would say is our diagnostic systems, okay? And when I think of diagnostic systems, it's encompassing of the labs, our reagent suppliers, and our clients. And these folks all working together to continuing to get better. So our PRRS diagnostic systems are continuing to mature. And just as one such example of that, as far as for what I could speak to locally, is just an example, is essentially all of our core assays that we're using today for PRRS are new since 2010. Right, so it's been a continued evolution, and so these are just some examples of some diagnostic system things that have occurred in our laboratory that I believe have all continued to have an impact of improvement. But I wanted to make the key point that really all of these core assays that we're using are indeed different, better than they were not so many years ago. And so just as an example, in the laboratory we've eliminated glass tubes from the laboratory, and so no glass tubes leave the mailroom. So everything is split aseptically by a team of folk that's all they do, right? And that was really all around steps to avoid contaminations with dealing with rubber stop tubes. Specialized people, we have people that's all they do is PRRS. They do it every day, and that's their world as far as QA/QC with that. The new PRRS ELISA IDEX, or the PRRS X3 assay, ELISA assay, a very significant step change in the quality and reduced false positive rates with that assay. New PCR assays, the PRRS negative laboratory that I mentioned, and new techniques with oral fluids. The other mega shift is that there's definitely an increased interest in this whole area of saying how do we tie our data from diagnostic data to these area regional disease management tools. And that is an area that I think there's a number of groups working on to say, how do we make this system better? Because historically, these tools, these area regional management tools, have been in the hands of our federal, state animal health officials and so on, and or specific groups that are working on a specific project. But what really hasn't happened today in a big way is to make this whole system very automated. So when the diagnostic submission comes into the lab, it can be automatically messaged to a central database where the data is interpreted and the status of the sites are updated, and then that interpreted data and site status is exported to these area regional disease management tools for mapping and viewing by permissioned users. And a project that we just got funded, that started funding as of December 1st actually, has been an area around how do we help work together to do that. And one thing in the U.S. is that the swine diagnostics are very concentrated to a few laboratories for reasons that I mentioned. And so there's some collaboration going on to say, how do we make this system better? And the thing about this is that the core of all of this is really around two things. Is premise identification, okay, that provides a unique identifier to say basically all that says is where did the samples come from, right? So all the information can be tied back to that. And affiliate codes is just who do I want to share that data with. And if we have those two pieces of information on any incoming submission, that's really the foundational elements to be able to make tools like this work, okay? Those are the two core components, prem IDs and affiliate codes. And if we have that up on the upfront side, these kind of technologies can all happen. And so as we've been going through this, we're looking for how do you find user-friendly ways for that to happen, because if it's not user-friendly, it won't happen, kind of thing. And we're working through systems that can be done both on paper-based submissions as well as web-based submissions to make that possible. And one of the things, what you find out very quickly when you get into projects like this is that anytime somebody has to write something down, it doesn't work. Whether it's at the farm or if it's at the lab or wherever, it just doesn't work because it's never the same, right? And so that's why the use of some sort of barcode-based identification is really critical. And the basic concept is can we get these sheets of stickers, and basically when they submit them from the sites, that they just stick them on the submission and send them in such that they can be scanned in. And I think that that'll have a lot of utility for people within regional projects and people with using them just within their system, so they can tie all this diagnostic data back to a particular premise or site in a very systematic way. And so we're working through user-friendly ways for people to do that. And so as one example of that is something we've established is for people to get, so they don't have to go get them one at a time kind of thing, is basically just send us a list of all your prem IDs and farm names, email us the spreadsheet, we'll email you back, or we'll mail you back these stacks of barcodes, okay? And then similarly, that's the idea. You get the barcode on the submission, and then tell us who you want to share the data with, and you're good to go. And similarly, is we're, with an emphasis on this whole premise lot flow level information, is we're in the process of updating our submission forms to better, and LIMS systems to be able to better capture that information, okay? And again, with these core things of how do we make this premise level and flow level information more robust, and also we're in the process of updating our VDL web submission tool, such again that these things can be readily submitted with that information. And last but not least, I wanted to say is I think one of the more significant gaps that we have, because there's been tremendous improvement, and as a whole our systems are very, the PRRS Diagnostic systems are very robust. But today there is a lack that we do not have this antibody-based DIVA associated with the modified live vaccines that we have available today. And so I think that is an area that remains where there's some significant upside. And so really I would just say in summary is that the take-home messages from my view anyway is that PRRS Diagnostics, there's been a significant shift to the use of these tools for preventative and programmatic purposes. The oral fluids, using that as a specimen, I think has been fairly transformative in applied PRRS Diagnostic applications. There's been a very significant increased use of sequencing data, which has largely been driven by people wanting to understand the movement of virus within a region or within a production system over time, and that our systems of diagnostics continue to improve. And I think one of the big opportunities going forward is really on the front end and in the back end of the diagnostics of how do we get this, all of this information linked to real-time integrated information management systems. As I look forward a bit, I think if we were here 2 or 3 years from now, we'll say that is an area that we've made significant progress and it's very much needed. And again, that the lack of an antibody-based DIVA definitely is an opportunity.